Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, thumma amma ba'd. To proceed, chapter on those whose testimony is rejected. Imām ibn Qudāmah rahimahullah in his book al-Umdat, which is a Hanbali primer, said under باب من ترد شهادته لا تقبل شهادة صبي ولا زائل العقل ولا أخرس ولا كافر ولا فاسق ولا مجهول الحال. Testimony is not accepted from the child, the mentally incompetent, the mute, the unbeliever, the fasiq, or one whose condition in terms of credibility is unknown. So there's much to unpack here, but we will talk about these issues in some detail. Testimony is not accepted from the child. So you have to be an adult for your testimony to be accepted, and that's by agreement. The iqrar, or the acknowledgement of the child with regard to the transactions that they are allowed to partake in is accepted. The acknowledgement of the child with regard to transactions they are allowed to partake in is accepted. You send your kid to the grocery store to buy something. Your kid is 10 years old, discerning, not an adult, but discerning child. You permitted them to purchase something. Their acknowledgement of this transaction will be accepted. But the testimony of the child is not accepted, even if the child is, the best of, it's just that, keep in mind, you can have like a 12-year-old that is more trustworthy than a 20-year-old or a 60-year-old, and more purer, better, but we're establishing standards here, and the standards have to apply across the board, because it is impossible to customize and tailor for every particular scenario or circumstance. ولا زائل العقل, the mute, the mentally incompetent, زائل العقل, the mentally incompetent, except when they are mentally competent, because some people they are in and out, and if they're in and out when they are competent mentally, their testimony will be accepted while they are competent. ولا أخرس, the mute. The mute's testimony will not be accepted, but there is some detail to this. If he writes, we will accept his testimony. But we will not accept sign language in testimony. We will not accept sign language in testimony. We will accept handwritten. Hanbalis, ولا كافر, the unbeliever. ولا فاسق. The fasiq is the wretched or the wicked person who commits sin without any sense of remorse or piety. That's the fasiq. Does not have is not conscious of God at all. So if you flip this, and we talk about conditions, not hindrances, flip it. So what is the first condition? Bulugh, puberty, or like maturity, majority. You flip the second, what is it? Sanity. You flip the third, mutakallim, capable of speech. You flip the fourth, kafir and fasiq together. Flip them, adl, which means what? Trustworthy. Okay. Wala majhul al-hal, or one whose condition in terms of credibility is unknown. Certainly you could flip the kafir alone as Islam, and flip the fasiq and majhul al-hal as adl. So you say Islam wal adala and make two out of them. Or you say al-adala includes Islam, and you make one out of it. So now we have majority, we have sanity, being able to speak, Islam, adala, and hifz. Hifz means what? Accuracy, competence. Competence in the sense of you're able to recall accurately. Then he talks about other hindrances from accepting your shahada. He says, وَلَا جَارٍ إِلَى نَفْسِهِ نَفْعًا وَلَا دَافِعٍ عَنْهَا شَرًّا. Likewise, it is not accepted from someone who will benefit himself or repel harm from it. Benefit himself or repel harm from it. Benefit himself or repel. If they give an example, it's like a weird example, but if someone wounds a person from whom I would inherit, and that person becomes sick that they may die from the wound, I cannot testify in this case, because eventually when they die, I will be entitled to the diya, the blood money. So I have conflict of interest here, so I cannot testify in this case. So we will just have to make sure there is no conflict of interest. وَلَا جَارٍ إِلَى نَفْسِهِ نَفْعًا. Likewise, not accepted from someone who will benefit himself or repel harm from it. وَلَا شَهَادَةُ وَالِدٍ وَإِنْ عَلَى لِوَلَدِهِ وَلَا وَلَدٍ لِوَالِدِهِ ولا سيد لعبده ولا مكاتبه ولا شهادتهما له ولا أحد الزوجين لصاحبه. Okay, so he says here, the parent, however, many generations removed for the child, his shahada will not be accepted. The child for the parent, not accepted. The master for his or her own slave or mukatib or mukatab, contracted slave, or their testimony for him or her, one spouse for the other, all of this is not accepted. We said in the previous chapter, your testimony for your brother or friend would be accepted, not your ancestors, not your descendants, not your spouses, not your mawla, whether it is the master or the slave, for each other. Okay, for and against. You could testify against your relatives, but you cannot testify for them. You can testify for your enemy, but you cannot testify against your enemy. So the Prophet ﷺ said, and this hadith was reported by Abdullah ibn Amr, لا تقبل شهادة خائن ولا خائنة. And here he talks about male or female for the shahada. ولا ذي غمر على أخيه ولا القانع لأهل البيت, or ولا شهادة القانع لأهل البيت, or كما قال. So the testimony لا تقبل, will not be accepted. Shahada, the testimony, خائن ولا خائنة, treacherous, male or female, ولا ذي غمر, one with animosity, على أخيه, against his brother, or the servant, or the sort of someone who is, could be your lawyer, could be your servant, it could be just, the servant for the house, the people of the household, the entire household. His shahada will not be accepted for them. Here it says against them. So if you have animosity, your shahada will not be accepted against your enemy. If you are a servant, or like the father and the child, the spouse and the other spouse, your shahada will be accepted against them, but not for them. If you come and testify against your father, we will accept your shahada. If you come and testify for your father or your child, we will not accept it. If you come and testify against your enemy, we will not accept it. If you come and testify for your enemy, we will accept it. That's personal enmity, not religious enmity, by the way. Then it says here, ولا شهادة الوصي فيما هو وصي فيه ولا الوكيل فيما هو وكيل فيه, or the testimony of the guardian about that which is under their custody, the agent about that which is within his power of attorney, ولا الشريك فيما هو شريك فيه, or the partner about the partnership, ولا العدو على عدوه, moreover the testimony of enemies against each other is not accepted. ولا معروف بكثرة الغلط والغفلة, nor that of one who is known for frequent errors and oversights. As I said, al-hifz, competency, is a condition. ولا من لا مروءة له, ولا من لا مروءة له كالسخرة وكاشف عورته للناظرين في حمام أو غيره. Finally, testimony is not accepted from one who has no muru'ah. I translate muru'ah as integrity. Muru'ah comes from humanity, by the way. I translate it as integrity because that's what it means here. Like the one who acts foolishly, causing himself to be mocked, tells jokes all the time, they say. The one who exposes his private parts in public and the like. Not only that, but keep in mind that al-adala is what? Adala comes from adl. Adl means what? Fair, just. But in this regard, it would mean what? Upright. Adala comes from fairness and justice. Fairness and justice comes from what? Al-adlayn, the two equal like sides from that come down from the when you have like what is it called? I forget it. When you have put something on top of your beast of burden to carry stuff in it, it's called the adlayn. What is it called? When you put something on top of a mule or a horse to carry stuff in the pockets, the two pockets on both sides, I guess, are called the adlayn because of their equality. So so justice and equality are intertwined. The word adl has to do with justice and equality are intertwined in the same word. So al-adala comes from all of this. So he's mu'tadil fi ahwalihi. It has to do with straightness and uprightness, and it has to do with justice and fairness. But when they give you the technical definition of al-adala, it goes beyond this, and they say that this adala, which is uprightness, is two parts. One part has to do with Salah ad-Din. That's not Salah ad-Din who liberated al-Quds, but uprightness in their religion. And the other part has to do with salama min khawarim al-muru'ah. So al-adala in the Hanbali madhab has two parts. Salah ad-Din, which is religiosity or uprightness in the religion, uprightness in the religion. And the other one is السلامة من خوارم المروءة. So how do you define this? It is basically integrity. Integrity is السلامة من خوارم المروءة. Khawarim means compromise, the things that compromise. Muru'a is integrity. Salama is to be free of or clear of the things that will compromise your integrity. So at the end of the day, integrity. Okay. Now, Salah ad-Din is two parts. One part is فعل الفروض, and the other part is ترك المحرمات, or فعل الواجبات ترك المحرمات. فعل الواجبات is what? Performance, commitment to obligations, your fulfillment of obligations. ترك المحرمات is abandonment of haram. فعل الفروض, under فعل الفروض, they will add something called that you should not abandon al-rawatib, the sunnah al-ratiba. If you abandon a sunnah al-rawatib completely, like you don't pray a sunnah, the routine sunnahs, if you completely abandon a sunnah al-rawatib, they will not accept your testimony because you are not careful about your deen. You're just running on like the edge. So you're doing the fara'id, but you're not giving yourself any cushion. So you're not being careful. So that's part of adala. But anyway, salama min khawarim al-muru'a, which is integrity. What does that mean? Okay, 2 million things. That is why Imām Taymiyyah rahimahullah said al-adala fi kulli waqtin bihasbih. Because sometimes when the fuqaha become too technical, it can result, and he was, I don't want to say, I want to use a good word, not obsessed, but like a good word like this. He was obsessed with making the Sharia functional, sustainable in all times. So whenever he sees excessiveness, he tries to tackle it. So the idea of not accepting women's testimony, for instance, as we said, when it's something that happens among them, he finds this to be a threat to the sustainability of the Sharia. A concept like being excessive in the requirements of adala that will be a threat to the sustainability of the Sharia. So so al-adala, for instance, the Hanbalis would say, if you lean, where you're sitting and you lean like this, and then you're not at the same level of everyone else. That's it, you're done. Your testimony will not be accepted. So like we're all sitting and you lean like this. So you're not at the same level of everyone else. If you stretch out your legs, you're done. If you go with your head uncovered, you're done. If you eat in the market, except like one bite or something, but if you eat in the market, you're done. If you sit in the street, you're done. If you uncover something that would be unexpected for you to uncover, that is not your aura, but let's say I come here with shorts down to the knees, done. That's an unexpected I come with wearing a Hawaiian shirt. Done. I make jokes too often. Done. Someone who would accept to be slapped like this. If you accept someone to slap you like this, done. And we can go on and about the things that will compromise your integrity as a person of muru'ah. All of these things will compromise your integrity. Now, they make it a point to say not what people of affluence consider to be compromising of integrity, such as carrying your child, for instance, or carrying food for your family. That actually was, it's just this person thing, but my father would have never been caught carrying a shopping bag because he was like in the army during the time of King Farouk. And if you were seen carrying a shopping bag, you were actually fired from the army because it is unbecoming of an army officer, particularly during the royal era, to be seen in the street carrying a shopping bag. So in the Hanbali madhab, they make it a point to say, no, that does not compromise your integrity. That's what people of affluence and higher socioeconomic status consider to compromise the integrity. These are things the Sahaba used to do regularly. It does not compromise your integrity. But the things that would compromise your integrity are the things that would be considered the need or unbecoming and unbefitting for a person of complete integrity, religious integrity, would not be doing. They make it a point also to make distinctions between different people because it is different circumstances. They make it a point to say that you having a lowly profession, lowly in what sense? In people's, because there is no lowly profession in Islam, as long as it's halal. But in people's understanding or perception, of your profession. If you are a sweeper, for instance, or if you are a janitor or something like this, they say that this does not compromise your integrity. But the same thing that you may be allowed to do as a janitor, like let's say you got tired and you sat in the street. If you are a scholar and you did the same thing, that will compromise your integrity. So they also make room for, your circumstances and your social standing, and what compromises the integrity of someone may not compromise the integrity of another one. And Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah added the huge factor of times are different, times change. Whatever applies to one time does not apply to another time. And the whole issue of adalah is also time dependent, because if you apply the same standards nowadays, and someone who does not, who abandons the sunan, he's praying the 5 daily prayers in the masjid, but he's not doing the sunan. If you exclude those from testifying, whom are you going to have left? 2% of the population. So you're only having 2% capable of testifying in the court. Is that a threat to the sustainability of Sharia? It is. So he said times are different, and times have to be factored in. Imam al-Sha'bi, for instance, and they talk about if you do something that is wrong based on ta'wil, that does not hurt your adalah. if you follow, they mentioned this because this would have been a big thing for them during those times, Middle Ages, particularly between the Hanbalis and Shafi'is. You know chess? The Shafi'is would allow you to play chess unless you're like using money and like you're bidding money in the course of the game, or you are it's distracting you from your obligations or something like this. The Hanbalis prohibited period. So what if you play chess? They will tell you if you believe it's haram, then it will compromise your adala. If you follow the Shafi'is, then it will not compromise your adala, although they will frown at it and they will be upset and stuff. But it will not compromise your adala, even for a Hanbali judge. You know, Imam al-Sha'bi used to play chess in public just so that he can disqualify himself from being solicited or tapped for judging, because it was the time of al-Hajjaj, and to work as a judge for al-Hajjaj was, you know, a nightmare. So what he decided to do is he would sit in public and play chess so that he would be disqualified. Anyway, the Shaykh then says, وَمَنْ شَهِدَ بِشَهَادَةٍ يُتَّهَمُ فِي بَعْضِهَا رُدَّتْ كُلُّهَا. If someone testifies but is suspected of lying about part of it, then his or her entire testimony will be rejected. وَلَا يُسْمَعُ فِي الْجَرْحِ وَالتَّعْدِيلِ وَالتَّرْجَمَةِ وَنَحْوِهَا إِلَّا شَهَادَةُ اثْنَيْنِ. To determine the trustworthiness of a person or of a translation, the testimony of two people is required. وَإِذَا تَعَارَضَ الْجَرْحُ وَالتَّعْدِيلِ قُدِّمَ الْجَرْحُ. If there are conflicting testimonies, the one asserting untrustworthiness will be favored. Why? Because, you know, people usually conceal their problems, conceal their issues, so that those who are testifying that he is untrustworthy must have access or knowledge of something that would make them testify. Now, some people use this like haphazardly to say that we will always favor that is in the court, and you have two witnesses, and it was explained to them what are the things that will disqualify you from testifying. This is different from people trying to disqualify, you know, scholars and da'is and so on the basis of favoring jarh over ta'dil or favoring the disqualifying testimony. Then the Shaykh says, وَإِنْ شَهِدَ شَاهِدٌ بِأَلْفٍ وَآخَرْ بِأَلْفَيْنِ إِنْ شَهِدَ شَاهِدٌ بِأَلْفٍ وَآخَرُ بِأَلْفَيْنِ قُضِيَ لَهُ بِأَلْفٍ وحلف مع شاهده على الألف الآخر إن أحب وإن قال أحدهما ألف من قرض وقال الآخر من ثمن مبيع لم تكمل الشهادة. If one witness testifies that someone is entitled to 1,000 units of currency and another testifies that it is 2,000, then 1,000 will be awarded. If he likes, he may take an oath along with the testimony of the other witness concerning the other 1,000. If one of them says the 1,000 was a loan, but the other says it was the price of a sold commodity, then the testimony is not conclusive. He is pointing to a large area of the law, which is when can you combine the two testimonies if there are two variant testimonies? Two variant testimonies. When can they corroborate each other and when they may not corroborate each other? He's given you two examples. One, they will corroborate each other. You say, you know, I know that Hatim owes Shernu $2,000. Hatim owes Shernu $2,000. Someone else comes and says, I know Hatim owes Shernu $1,000. They agreed on 1,000. 1,000 will be awarded. They disagreed over 1,000 because there could be many reasons why someone may recollect that, it could have been cumulative. We could have, I borrowed 1,000 and then another 1,000, and then I admitted 2,000 in front of someone, 1,000 in front of another one, etc. So can we bring these two testimonies together and at least establish the 1,000? Yes. What about the other 1,000? I have only one witness for it. Can I take an oath? Yes, I will be able to take an oath and get the other 1,000 if I take the oath. So what if someone comes and says, I testify that Hatem borrowed 1,000 from Shernu. I testified that Shernu sold his laptop to Hatem for 1,000. Those two testimonies will not corroborate each other. They will not corroborate each other because they're mentioning two different reasons of entitlement. Is it a sale or a loan? Then وإذا شهد أربعة بالزنا أو شهد اثنان على فعل سواه واختلفوا في المكان أو الزمان أو الصفة لم تكمل شهادتهم. If 4 people testify to fornication or 2 witnesses testify to something else, yet they disagree over the location, time, or description of the offense, their testimony is not conclusive. That is why they get interrogated a lot by the judge. They have to describe everything, and if inconsistency basically can be shown between them, then their testimony will not be accepted. And this brings us to the end of this chapter. I'm sorry for going over the time. I usually don't. قل قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك اشهد ان لا اله الا انت استغفرك واتوب اليك. And we'll start the Q&A session right away and go on for 25 to 30 minutes inshallah. وإياكم.